So Couchbase have asked me to come along and just talk about what we're doing with Couchbase and our solution, but also some of the challenges we've had with Nickel and how we've solved those. Kevin's going to keep me honest with the timings, so I hope I'll get through these slides, but we'll see how we go. So first of all, just a little bit about who I am. I spent most of my life with GIS solutions. I manage, maintain, implement, enhance those, but for the last few years I've moved away from GIS and SatNav and look after some of the change of delivery at Centrica. So I'm now the head of integration delivery at Centrica. I'm not the only one, there are others, but outside work, after my daughter left college, I realized I was a taller version of my not-so-svelte father, so I've taken up running and diving and that sort of thing. So there we go. So a little bit about Centrica. We're an energy services company. You may not have heard of us, but our tagline is everything we do is focused on satisfying the changing needs of our customers. So we actually own one of the big bad boys, British Gas in the UK, but we also own Direct Energy in the US and Canada, which is, I'm told, the largest residential energy retailer in North America, and number 2 in power supply to commercial customers in the US and Canada. We also own Bord Gas in Ireland, a supply company, but also offering a range of gas boiler maintenance services to customers. And, of course, British Gas, which is our major brand. British Gas, I'll tell you a little bit about British Gas. It's got a long history. It started in 1812. It was originally called the Gas Light and Coke Company, and we supplied town gases made of coal. It was founded by an immigrant to the UK called Frederick Windsor. And to give us a bit of sense of where this is in history, this was the time when Britain was still at war with Napoleon, and it was the start of the 1812 war with the US, sadly. So after a long time, in 1948, the area gas boards, and this is a nationalisation after the Second World War. In 1972, British Gas itself was formed, and 1986 it was privatised, and Centrica itself was formed as part of a demerger from British Gas. So it's broken into a number of different components, and we got into telephony, consumer, finance, plumbing, and drains, and along with obviously the gas itself. So, and today we're moving more into new energy, utilities, technology and services, the connected home. We're really trying to diversify and becoming much more of a digital company. We've got about 20 different workforces in British Gas. They range from about 20 to 8,000 members of the workforce, and we've got about 15,000 employees working in the field. They perform discrete roles, and there's a limited sharing of resource across the workforces. So I think you can start to see where our problems are starting to come in here. There's limited sharing of resource across those groups, mainly because of the expertise required for the types of work. We also have, so we have each of those solutions have their own, each of those workforces have their own solution. So we've got an Oracle Forms solution, we've got Salesforce, we've got an SAP-based system. You name it, we've got it in our back end. We specialize in diversification. So there's also some challenges. So we have some of the workforce have seasonal variations in demand for their jobs and skills. So for example, in the winter, our heating engineer teams are very busy. Where in summer, they're not so. There's an opportunity to share some of those resources across different work groups, but they don't have the commonality of systems or skills. So to solve this problem, we had a challenge from our senior leadership we put all of our systems into one bucket. That seems like a nice simple statement to make, but it's a bit of a challenge to do. So we've drawn up a target architecture, and we've started talking about a multi-channel services platform. The idea was that this could contain consistent information across different channels, so it's mobile, call centers, website, and any other way that the customers interact with us. We've not necessarily delivered this architecture, but it's a template for where we want to be. So I want to show you this slide because you see that we've delivered something close to this, but the detail of how we've got there has led to some differences in where the components are positioned within the architecture. So the principles are there, but not necessarily how we've done it. To achieve this multi-channel service platform, we put together a small team, and we just wanted to see where we ended up. We separated this out from the rest of the business. So we, as an old company, we do have some archaic processes, and that would have slowed us down. So we created a small team. It's only 15 people strong, and we've really just let them go off and do their own thing. And so this is about the journey we went on. We've got some challenges. So the common customer information was an objective. I think you'll hear that throughout this conference, is that the single view of the customer is pretty important. We started hitting obstacles. The operating model we have, the lack of a business case and agreed solution, our technology and vendor choices. So as I said before, we ring-fenced the team, and we've challenged them to deliver a prototype iOS app and back-end services. I was asked to lead that team, and it was an exciting and interesting time. There are some key challenges that are worth covering here: the security and also business buy-in. The cloud was very new to our security teams. They were nervous about it, and they led us to quite non-constructive conversations. We present options, and they would be rejected just because they didn't like the cloud, particularly public cloud like AWS and Azure. So the alternate was to partner with different teams. So we actually partnered with security, networks, and the rest of our key obstacle teams, and we made them part of our solution. And this worked really well. And it's for a company like ours, it's probably a good model to work in, to separate out those guys and partner. So we actually delivered something. So we call it the Customer Information App. We put this in the hands of our engineers. Actually, that's my hand. It can show data consolidated from all of our back-end systems, including historical customer interactions, the services we deliver to the customers, and any feedback we may have received from the customer. The app doesn't seem very remarkable, but it is the first time our engineers have had access to information about our work, our information about our customers that relates to other business units and sections of the workforce. For example, if this gives the engineer a good insight into our customer, and they've got a good understanding of whether our customers have energy with us or different services with us, but also whether they're a vulnerable customer. So if there's a vulnerability about the customer that's been collected by one workforce, that's shared with everyone. So it's now part of the routine. I'd say it's over 75% of the engineers now use it day to day, and they like it. It's part of their routine. Every time they go into a customer's premise, they look up the app. They can have targeted conversations with their customers. So instead of asking whether they want to whether they should wear overshoes in the house, they're presented at the door with overshoes on. They're aware of sensitivity of the customer, and they can have a good conversation. And there are millions and millions of customer launches, the customer lookups since the launch. So we've launched it about 2 years ago. It's used by each of our 15,000 engineers, and more actually, which I'll go into in a little bit. And the quote that I quite like is, before the CI app, I had to ask whether my customers took gas and electricity from us. Now I can thank them. So it seems quite a small thing, but actually it's quite transformational for the engineers. So we found that we built something great that the corporation didn't know it needed. It's a fast, reliable caching using Couchbase and delivering the data. It's secure access to sensitive customer information. We secure the app, and we secure the device it's coming from. And it's a really flexible model for integration. So I'll show you exactly what we built in a moment. So in the process of delivering a solution that's simple to use at the point of consumption, we've had to stand up a completely new technical stack. So from the bottom here, you've got the Hadoop-based data lake, which is a growing repository for data from the line of business systems. So this is our systems of record systems. such as SAP, Couchbase, you know, the smorgasbord of systems we have. Couchbase is probably using a subset of that data, so we use Spark to pour the data from the lake, but only the data that we need. And so it's a real caching of the data. So we dedupe the data, we detect where there are errors in the data, and we logically remove those errors, and we have a single view of the customer and of their products. This data is exposed via APIs through the microservices layer, which is in turn exposed by the API gateway. So at the top there, you can see a number of different clients that we are picking up now. So that's a subset of what we've got now. It's a growing world. It's a slow burn, but with the team delivering successfully to the business, we've seen a big increase in demand, both for the data we collate and host, but also the stack we've stood up. So it's including, but not limited to, secure off-domain access to HR tools and for the employees globally, insurance partnering, so we can offer our loyal customers better prices, identification of data errors as part of the process, bringing the data together for the first time. So for example, if a customer has a different type of data that's held within one system and then another system has a completely different data set, we can actually identify that for the first time. Seems a small thing, but it's important. And actually, we can actually ask the customer whether their data is correct and pour that back into our core systems. And it's now becoming a key component of our ongoing digital transformation, including the omni-channel, which is really what it was intended to do, that multi-channel service platform. Sounds great, doesn't it? So there's a sunny uplands, looks perfect. We got more business coming to the teams. So it was very exciting, lots of people pouring in saying, wow, Couchbase is fantastic, it can solve everything. We made some errors, and I'll go into those errors and how we got out of them. So we put our hands up and offered our services to create fast change caching for the management of jobs and customers. We were all smiling, particularly for some of our field systems. We didn't control what the development teams were doing, so we just gave them the keys and told them to drive. But the software engineers had very little experience of NoSQL, and particularly Nickel. So they just dived in. They jumped into the world of Nickel, but we didn't tell them how to do it. They could drive databases, but not this type of database. The sort of Nickel queries we started coming up with were fantastic. I think the consultant we brought in to help us solve the problem went pale at the sight of these. So there were Nickel queries that I'm not going to show here, but there were update queries, there were nested queries, and to support those, there were multiple indexes applied to the database. And these are primary indexes because they wanted the flexibility, because they're engineers, that's what they wanted. And it just slowed everything to a crawl. So I'd say dozens of complex Nickel queries and dozens of indexes. It was terrible and unpredictable performance. So we went from being a hero to zero pretty quickly. You know, Couchbase name was mud in the business. It was, and everyone was trying to move away from it. So how do we fix it? So we reached out to Couchbase professional services team and asked them to work directly with the development team. So this is not our development team. This is a team we said, here's the keys, go drive. So at the same time, we coached the field application team, our own team. We embedded our own team with the development team. And it took time. We moved to key value lookups. So we're taking the documents out, editing and putting them back in, rather than update in situ, which is what they were doing, which is what you tend to do with a traditional database. And we allowed the development team the time to test and learn through their experience. We also, as my postgraduate university supervisor used to say, if you can't make it good, make it thick on. So we've changed the environment configuration. So we really upped the game in terms of the size of the machines they're running, So there's a bit of wiggle room on exactly how they use nickel. We've not banned nickel altogether, although that was the ask from my VP. And we're making sure that they're actually using the best SDK. They were using the own handcrafted SDK, because these are software engineers, not app developers. And we've learned some lessons. So the first one is making sure your people know how to use the powerful tools at their disposal. Plan how you use nickel. The ability to create and use SQL-type queries is really helpful, but you should use it like a surgical knife. Don't apply it in the same way you would SQL. And this is changed in Couchbase later versions than the one we were using, which is 4.1. We're now moving up to 4.6, and we'll move to 5.0 as soon as possible. Because you may be hitting problems, but I think as a fast-moving company, Couchbase themselves would have found the problem and solved it, which is pretty much where we find ourselves. And use Couchbase when it makes sense to. It's not a match for every use case. We are considering a mixed estate for some solutions. We've also changed the way we operate our Couchbase instead. We started out with one environment that did it all. So it was just a big cluster that just did everything. We now have clusters that support different patterns of use, along with backup clusters for key semi-mastered data. We don't tend to master any data at all. It is a system of engagement. As well as shared performance, sandbox, and test clusters. So on the left-hand side there, you've got a cluster. You can't really see on that screen, but we've got a cluster that's focused on a field system. So it's got a couple of query nodes in there, query and index nodes, and then the rest of its data nodes. We're sharing a cluster across a data center, so there's a lot of resilience built in. We're replicating that also for another system. We have a smaller cluster, which is actually the original cluster for our customer information app. There's no index and query nodes in there. It's all entirely key value lookups. We have a separate backup cluster, so any key data is pulled across using XDCR to a backup cluster in a separate data center. We're in fact across two data centers, which is now all AWS based. We have a separate performance test cluster, because what we found was that our software development teams wanted to use our blue-green, one size of our blue-green model to do performance testing, which really wasn't great. And then we have our sandbox and dev test clusters. So these are all quite separate. So we've had to increase the size of our estate, but actually it's been a really helpful exercise to do. And so this is an ongoing program. All of this is in the cloud now. We've got a much more secure way of handling Couchbase, and a much more confident security team who now understand exactly how secure AWS can be. And we're actually on the journey of becoming a much more modern digital company. So I think I've rushed through those slides. When I practiced in my room a while ago, it was dead on time, but of course, I was much faster. So I can go to questions.
10 minutes for questions. Perfect.
Yeah.
I did observe a couple of slides, something like journey or catalyst for change. How did you design that slides?
So which?
How did you design that slides? The journey and the catalyst. One starts with the journey. That one,
yeah.
the picture. And the other one is journey. Starts with the journey. Previous slide.
The journey.
Yeah, the one next.
This one?
Yeah. So do you design any kind of NLP algorithm to come up with this slide? Or using your own data, using Couchbase? That was my question.
The slide itself?
Yes.
So So these are the key. So it's a word cloud. Yeah. So it's the key. You basically pour in. We didn't use Couchbase to do it, but we poured in the key letters we wanted to. The key words we wanted to, and then you say, okay, this is the sort of word cloud I want to have.
I anticipated you use some kind of algorithm using your own data.
That would have been exciting, wouldn't it? Because then you can vary according to vary the size of the words according to their frequency.
Some kind of ranking.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Other questions?
My question is, when you migrated, did you migrate to Couchbase from other, technology?
It was entirely new, actually. So the need to have a caching layer was a new innovation. So we had the Hadoop-based data lake had been there for probably about 8 to 12 months before that. But actually, we had a need to. It wasn't fast enough for dealing with queries from the field or the application. So we put in Couchbase purely as a caching layer, so entirely new for that function only.
And my next question related to first one, do you have I'm not familiar, that's why I'm asking, do you have agreement with Couchbase based on subscription, or how it works?
Yeah, so we have a subscription-based license with Couchbase.
Okay, and this 1 year subscription?
It's a year's subscription, yeah.
Based on what? On your servers?
Yeah, it's the number of CPUs.
Number of CPUs,
Yeah.
Okay. And did
But
it
it-
become more expensive than it was before? My question is, did you save money, or you have to expand your,
Well, actually, what we've done is it's come more expensive in terms of the number of licenses, but obviously with scale, we do get a discount. But we've also upped the service level. So we were on Gold, which was appropriate for what we were doing. But actually, as it becomes more important to the business, for example, we're now going. Now people realise we've got the single view of the customer, and we're looking to pour deltas from the line of business systems to Couchbase. It becomes more important to the business. We've upped that support to platinum grade. So it's.
Yeah, just a question from me. With your business teams that you're working with, do they care about the actual technologies, or are they more concerned with actually it's really cool because it's cloud-based, we're using NoSQL? I mean, what sort of level do they engage with you on it?
So they're not really concerned that, they love the fact it's cloud-based because it's obviously the right thing to do if it's cloud-based. They're more impressed with the speed in which it functions, but also the content of the data. So one of the key features they really want to have is high currency of data. So we've got a bit of a lag at the moment because there's a lag from the time it gets into the data lake and the lag from the time we actually load in to Couchbase. So they're interested in getting a more event-based solution. So it's a combination of cloud-based, but also the ease of use, but also the currency of data, and the content as well. So it's all of the above. But the fact it's NoSQL, they're not bothered really.
Thanks for sharing, Alan. 2 questions quickly. You mentioned, initially you were being bombarded by nickel queries and it created a mess.
Yes.
So now that you have moved to the key value and other, what are the use cases that you're finding in your organization that nickel is best suitable for? And second is, are you seeing more uptake for operational type of queries / reports, dashboards, or do you also have analytical, /
Okay, so so there's obviously 2 questions there. So the way we're using nickel at the moment is there is still a need, particularly a good example of where we might use nickel with a couple of good examples. One is for sorting on queuing systems, making sure that we get the queuing correct, but also there's job exception management. So where a job hasn't gone quite well, that needs to be poured into an exception management solution. So we're still using nickel for that. But we're cutting down the number of ad hoc queries. So it's not so much nickel was a problem; it was the high number of primary indexes was killing us. And the other, your other question was, Oh, so yeah. So actually, what we do, we use Hadoop's. Hadoop's been set up for that. So our whole MI estate hangs off the back of Hadoop, and so any key data, audit data, for example, we pour back into Hadoop. So we basically just scoop the whole bucket and put it back into Hadoop.
When you you mentioned you let a new group take Couchbase and have the keys and drive, and Nickel got a little out of hand. Why did you do that?
It was naivety, I think. Yeah. So because they are a good, experienced group. I think there was naivety on their part that the challenge was bigger than they expected it to be, but also naivety on our part because we wanted to grow our estate, basically. We wanted more people to use Couchbase, wanted more people to use our technology, and so we said, off you go fill your boots. And you know, it was a moment of lapse of reason, but actually we've had time to repent at leisure. But having said that, we've learned a huge amount by going through the experience.
Other questions?
What do you see for future? I mean, what is your plan for future development of your databases? I mean, do you see other, products, or it will be?
Yeah. There's a definitely big future. So we are moving more and more to it truly is a system of engagement now. So I can see the workload of the team increasing in terms of the number of users coming through. So we're going to be using it for dynamic pricing, which is about geography, but also the profile of the customer. We're going to work more and more on the currency of the data, so it's coming from the line of business systems, not necessarily through Hadoop all the time. And that's the key. It's enriching the data, so it is truly omni-channel, but also increasing the concurrency of the data.
Is there any issues with your regulations for the data?
Yeah.
Is it by request? Is it supported by?
Yes. So we are fully compliant with the GDPR regulations, and so we have an internal audit, you might imagine, for a company the size of Centrica. So we've passed that with no problems at all.
Thanks, Alan. Appreciate
That's
it.
all right, no problem.
And just round of applause for Alan.